on Saturday night during the UFC 310 broadcast, the UFC officially announced UFC 312, Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2, which is a complete and utter abomination. The UFC just fumbled so bad. They fumbled so bad. The UFC needed to make Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. That was the fight to make. That was the fight that made the most sense. That was the fight that made the most money. That's the fight that the fans wanted. That's the fight that Dricus wanted. That's the fight that Khamzat wanted. There better be a damn good reason why the UFC didn't make this. I'm going to speculate on that later in the video. But then also on Saturday night, Dana White showed up at the UFC 310 post-fight and was asked about Du Plessis versus Strickland 2 for the middleweight title and how much, you know, the UFC kind of weighed potentially giving Khamzat Chimaev the title shot. And Dana White made himself look so dumb. Luckily, I have all the receipts. And we're going to make Dana look like a total hypocrite, an idiot, with his response to being asked about Khamzat Chimaev getting a title shot. But first off, I mean, this is a total bummer. I'll start off with this. This is a total bummer, but I was wrong. I was wrong. For 6 months now, I've been telling you guys, listen, Strickland's saying I'm sitting out. He's ducking fights against Robert Whittaker. He get a boring-ass split decision win against Paulo Costa. For months, I said, look, I believe that Khamzat Chimaev will buzzsaw through Whittaker, which happened. Okay, I predicted that. And then he would skip the line. And what I mean is actually earn his title shot. It's not even really skipping the line. But he would jump over Strickland, who was supposedly next, according to Dana White, and he would get the next title shot against Dricus Du Plessis. Well, Khamzat Chimaev went out at UFC 308, buzzsaw through Robert Whittaker, absolutely wrecked him, took him down, took his jaw home, made him tap, frantically tap. And then afterwards, Dricus Du Plessis like, you know what? That's the biggest fight. That's the most dangerous fight. That's the fight the fans want. That's the fight I'm going to make the most pay-per-view points off of. Let's make it. And then Dana White, all he had to do was book it. All he had to do was book it. It could have been February. It could have been March. Could have been April. Who knows? I don't care when it would have happened. It was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. So we'll start off with this. That was my prediction. Okay, I thought that was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen. Now they booked Du Plessis versus Strickland 2. So I'll start off with this because I know someone's going to be jumping down in the comments saying, Joey, you were wrong. Joey, you were so wrong. Okay, I was wrong. I was wrong. I didn't realize the UFC was so brain dead and out of touch with fans. They would book Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2. Boring-ass crybaby Sean Strickland who ducks fights. I didn't realize they would prioritize this over literally one of the biggest fights they could make in 2025, which was Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. Sorry, I didn't realize that. You know, I completely misjudged the UFC. It's like every time I think the UFC is going to do the right thing, somehow they find a way to just fumble the bag completely. You know, it's like being a fan of the UFC nowadays, it's like such a roller coaster of emotions. Like, oh, 2025, let's return after 4 weeks off. Let's have Mackenzie Dern versus, I don't even remember what the fight is now, the first fight of the year. Mackenzie Dern versus somebody. That's the main event. Oh, we're going to go to Apex, first fight after 4 weeks off. But then they announced UFC 311, and it's this stacked card with Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2 as the main event. And the co-main event's Merab Dvalishvili, you know, versus Umar Nurmagomedov for the bantamweight title. I'm like, oh my God, and the card's stacked. I'm like, oh yes, hell yeah. So it's like the UFC will do something good on one hand, and the next thing you know, they're just shitting on everything else. It's like they're so out of touch with the fan base, and you can't convince me right now. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what anyone's saying on social media. I don't care what anyone's really even saying down in the comments. You can't convince me there is a single fan that would prefer Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2 over Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev, unless you're just biased. Unless you're a fanboy of Sean Strickland. Because, you know, he's kind of like got that internet right-wing grifter personality. And that's what you like about him. Because Sean Strickland is literally one of the most boring fighters on the roster. Yet you have a subset of fans that are like, man, hell yeah, Strickland, yeah. Habib is boring, Islam's boring, but we like Strickland. And not to give Khamzat Chimaev a title shot over Sean Strickland after Khamzat literally ragdolled and destroyed Robert Whittaker in the first round. But Strickland on a one-fight winning streak against Paulo Costa split decision. And before anyone jumps down in the comments and says, Joey, that was an errant scorecard. Literally nothing happened in the fight. People think that Strickland dropped him a million times. He didn't even drop him. It was just Paulo Costa stumbling over his own 2 feet because he's a bum. It was a boring-ass fight. that nobody did anything. There was no real damage dished out, but oh, that's a typical Strickland fight. Strickland is literally one of the most boring fighters in the entire roster. And what makes it worse is he goes out there every single time. We're going to go to war. We're going to bleed for you guys. Hell yeah. And then he goes out there and jabs and teeps. By the way, Khamzat Chimaev is making fun of Strickland on Twitter. We're going to check that out in this video as well. I think this is such a disgrace of a matchup. I mean, Strickland is, he does not deserve it. 1 fight win streak, split decision, Paulo Costa, boring ass fighter, or 14-0 Khamzat Chimaev, who damn near finishes everybody, who's coming off, you know, a crazy win over Robert Whittaker, who was ranked number 2 in the division, who, by the way, Strickland absolutely ducked. Before that, beat Kamaru Usman on short notice. People didn't give him credit for that. Before beat Gilbert Burns at 170, that was before Kevin Holland. I understand that I went out of order. Was promised a title shot after Gilbert Burns. Was promised a title shot after Kamaru Usman. Was promised a title shot after Robert Whittaker. And somehow, boring-ass Sean Strickland gets a title shot instead. There better be a damn good reason. You know what I don't want to hear? I don't ever want to hear anybody say, oh, the Dagestani privilege. And I understand, let me get this out of the way because people always correct me on this. I understand Khamzat Chimaev is not Dagestani. He's Chechen. But people say Dagestani privilege, and what they mean by Dagestani privilege is they just mean the guys from the Caucasus region. Okay, whether it's, you know, Chechen, whether it's Dagestani, whether it's Georgian, whatever it may be. They're like, Dagestani privilege. Khamzat went out there against Robert Whittaker and absolutely dominated him. By the way, Robert Whittaker is the guy that Strickland was ducking because he's like, yeah, I beat Paulo Costa. Hell yeah, I beat Paulo Costa. I jabbed and kicked Paulo Costa, who's literally scrubbed, doesn't have a win in the UFC. Doesn't have a win against a fighter on the UFC roster. Let me correct myself. So instead of booking Dricus, who's one of the most exciting fighters on the roster, versus Khamzat Chimaev, who's one of the most exciting fighters on the roster, literally a no-brainer, one of the biggest fights the UFC could book right now, they're like, let's give it to Sean Strickland. Let's give it to Sean Strickland, who's boring as hell, a crybaby, who cried that the judges rigged it against him in the first fight, who cried that a headbutt is the only thing that did damage, which, by the way, it wasn't a headbutt. I broke that down countless times. I'm not going to break it down in this video. Who cried on Theo's Vaughn podcast because Dricus Du Plessis talked crap to him. And this dude only goes to war with influencers. Instead, we're going to give him a title shot. By the way, let's actually pull up his resume real quick. Here's UFC 312. Here's the fight card so far. By the way, Weili Zhang, Tatiana Suarez. Tatiana Suarez, let's pull her up real quick. Because we're going to talk about this. People are going to say, well, Khamzat's unreliable. That is a myth. If you are regurgitating that Khamzat Chimaev is unreliable, that is a total and complete myth that we're going to break down in a second. But Tatiana Suarez is getting a title shot. She doesn't even fight. She doesn't even fight. I mean, look, Verna Jandiroba, December 7th, Suarez injury. February 17th, Suarez withdrew for whatever reason. She has 2 fights since 2019. Yeah, she fought Nina Nunes June 2019. Since then, Montana De La Rosa in 2023 and Jessica Andrade 2023. We're going to give her a title shot in 2025. She barely fights 2 fights in like 6 years. I mean, that's insane. I mean, this is the most interesting matchup right now, but she doesn't even show up. I'm not sure that she's going to show up. I know people are going to say that, oh, Khamzat's unreliable. Khamzat's unreliable. Oh, my God. That's not true. Total and complete fabrication. And I never, ever want to hear anybody say Dagestani privilege. I mean, look at this resume right here. Look at it. I mean, if this isn't worthy of a title shot right now in the current middleweight division, I don't know what is. So first off, you can grade wins from a weight class below when they move up and take that into account when potentially earning a title shot above, okay? So he goes on this crazy winning streak. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's undefeated in general. Beats Gilbert Burns, is guaranteed a welterweight title shot. Doesn't come to fruition because the whole Nate Diaz stuff. Fights Kevin Holland. Absolutely destroys Kevin Holland. Fights Kamaru Usman on short notice. By the way, Paulo Costa pulled out of this fight right here. Paulo Costa, let me reiterate that. Paulo Costa pulled out of that, but somehow Khamzat's blamed for that. Then he fights Kamaru Usman, takes Kamaru Usman on 1 week's notice, a massive stylistic difference. Injures himself in the first round and still dominates the fight, and people act like it was not a good win. Khamzat Chimaev is a victim of his own success. They acted like a dominating Kamaru Usman and 10-8ing him in the first round. And in shape Usman, it's not like he was some fat ass at middleweight. It's not like he came in with love handles, muffin top, shout out Jamal Hill. He came in shape and Khamzat Chimaev dominated him. Then he finally steps up against Robert Whittaker. First fight was canceled due to Chimaev's issue. He was sick. He was ill, deathly ill in the hospital. God forbid he gets sick like one time ever and everyone's acting like he's pulling out of every fight, but we'll get to that in a second. He finally fights Robert Whittaker and goes out there and absolutely wrecks him in the first round. 3 minutes and 34 seconds, didn't even eat a shot, destroyed Robert Whittaker, the guy that Sean Strickland was ducking, okay? And somehow that's not worthy of a title shot. Meanwhile, you have Sean Strickland on a one-fight win streak against Paulo Costa. Split decision, bullshit, dog shit fight, horrible fight, boring-ass fight. And then you look at the rest of his career. I mean, okay, he gets this undeserved title shot against Israel Adesanya. He wins, fair enough. Fair enough, he wins. That wasn't even that good of a fight itself. The first round was exciting, that's it. It was really just the unexpectation that Strickland would win that made the fight exciting in general. He got a title shot off beating unranked Abus Magomedov. And you look at his overall career, okay, he beat Abus. Abus gassed himself out, who's a complete bum, doesn't have any cardio, and got finished. Outside of that, at middleweight, when's the last time he's gotten a finish? I think it's like 2020? Yeah, 2020 against Brendan Allen was the last time Sean Strickland got a finish. Sean Strickland's a boring-ass fighter. He's lost, what, 4 out of his last 6? Or no, he's lost 2 out of his last 6. And look at this. I mean, he lost to Alex Pereira at middleweight not that long ago, 2022. Lost to Jared Cannonier. Lost to Dricus Du Plessis. So he's lost 3 out of his last 7, right? 3 out of his last 7. He's 4-3 in his last 7 fights. And he's on a one-fight winning streak. But because he had a good effort against Dricus. Oh, yeah, because, you did a good job. It was a close fight. You never defended your title. We're going to give him a title shot? We're going to give him an immediate rematch, essentially? I know he beat Costa, but that was a bullshit split decision nobody cared about against a dude who doesn't even deserve to be in the top 15. Again, doesn't have a win over current top 15 ranked middleweight. This is worthy of a title shot? It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Again, and instead, you have 14-0, dude who destroyed Robert Whittaker. It makes no sense. I never want to hear people cry about Dagestani privilege, Caucasus region privilege. I never want to hear it again. Khamzat Chimaev is being skipped over. He is the deserving contender, not Sean Strickland, not crybaby Strickland, okay? Khamzat Chimaev is the #1 contender. And I don't know why the UFC would do this. There has to be a good reason. There has to be a good reason. I don't get it. There has to be something going on. Maybe the UFC is planning a Saudi Arabia pay-per-view. And maybe they're planning that for fall of next year, summer of next year. So they're just booking Dricus versus Strickland. And the winner, they're going to force to fight Chimaev in Saudi Arabia or something like along those lines. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe there is a health issue with Khamzat. Maybe he injured himself and we don't know about it. And he was injured going into the Whittaker fight, but he fought through it and he needs time to recover and didn't want to fight in February. Maybe they didn't want Khamzat fighting in Australia because apparently Khamzat went to Australia on a vacation. And apparently, according to Khamzat, he can get anywhere but the United States. So that's the only thing I can guess is for whatever reason, maybe visiting isn't the same as getting a work visa in Australia. I don't know. There better be a damn good reason because this is fumbled horribly. Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev is one of the biggest fights the UFC can make. And instead of booking it, they're booking Dricus versus Sean Strickland. By the way, I'll give you an early prediction for that fight. Dricus is going to win, probably finish Strickland because Strickland just has a wonky style. But he's been the same fighter forever. He hasn't changed at all. He hasn't changed. He's just a boring-ass fighter who walks forward, says he's going to go to war, but then he just teeps and jabs the entire time. Dricus is just going to walk forward and hit him with bigger shots like he did the first fight. And the rounds were razor close because Strickland's hard to hit, but guess what edged out the rounds for Dricus? Forward pressure because Strickland was just backing up because he was scared of Dricus. Okay? That's why he was crying before the fight. He was mentally broken previous to the fight. And I think Dricus is going to beat him again. And now I want to talk about something real quick. I'm going to skip over to something. So I'm picking Dricus. I'm picking Dricus to finish Sean Strickland. Hopefully Khamzat Chimaev finally gets the winner. Maybe in South Africa. Could you imagine Du Plessis versus Chimaev in South Africa? That'd be massive. But I want to talk about something. Because I've seen people say, well, Khamzat Chimaev got skipped over for a title shot because he's unreliable. He doesn't show up for fights. That is the biggest stupid myth I've ever heard in my entire life. And I'm tired of hearing dumbass fans and people regurgitate it, like the media regurgitates it like it's true. Basically, Khamzat Chimaev has pulled out of one fight ever in the UFC. And I know people are going to be like, Joey, what? What are you talking about, Joey? That's wrong. Look at his Tapology. You got it in front of you right now. Yeah, I said what I said. I'm going to back it up right now. He pulled out against Robert Whittaker. He was sick right here, June of 2024. Okay? That's it. That's the only real pullout by Khamzat Chimaev. So you go back, Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa pulled out with staph infection. So I know what you're going to talk about. You're going to talk about these 3 Leon Edwards fights that were back to back to back. Oh, well, you're talking about the first fight. Leon Edwards was sick with COVID. Okay? And guess what? Khamzat Chimaev got COVID because right then there was a worldwide pandemic. Everyone was getting sick. So Chimaev pulled out when they rescheduled it for January. By the way, Chimaev had it right before, had it the same time as Leon, right? They rescheduled it anyway. They just said, oh, let's just push it down the line. And a lot of the time back then, they were just pushing fights down the road. Sometimes they would happen and sometimes they wouldn't happen. So it got canceled. They pushed it down the road. Chimaev was still sick because some people were reacting differently to it. Then they said, okay, let's push it down the road some more, just a little bit more. Let's rebook it for March, early March, late January, pushed it down and basically a month and a half later, and he was still sick. So people count all these as like 3 pullouts from Chimaev. One was Leon Edwards, and Chimaev had it at the same time. It was both of them sick in December, and Chimaev just never recovered from it. So the UFC, it's no different than when Raul pulled out, Raul Rosas Jr. pulled out the night of, the UFC was like, oh, we're going to book it next week. And Raul wasn't prepared because he was still sick. It was the UFC's mismanagement. They knew Chimaev was sick and they were booking him anyway. So it's like he didn't even pull out. And even if you want to say, okay, he pulled out of one of these, give him credit for one. So he's pulled out 2 fights in the UFC ever. 2 fights in the UFC ever is real, genuine pullouts. One from being sick. We'll count one of the 3 here. That really, and it's a worldwide pandemic at the time. People were getting sick left and right. Fights were getting canceled every single card. But somehow, this is Chimaev being unreliable. By the way, it was 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago. Then you have the Whitaker one, basically, and that's it. I mean, somehow he gets blamed for Paulo Costa. So we're referencing fights from 2021 to act like Chimaev's unreliable. Makes absolutely no sense. And even if you want to say, oh, well, he pulled out against Robert Whitaker. So we'll say since 2022, he's pulled out of 1 fight. Let's look at Sean Strickland. Is Sean Strickland unreliable? Since 2022, let's go to February of 2022. Oh, he pulled out of this fight against Jared Cannonier. So hopefully Sean Strickland shows up to the fight against Dricus because he's about as unreliable as Khamzat Chimaev. He's about as unreliable as Khamzat Chimaev. He pulled out of 1 fight since 2022. So if you want to go back in history and count up every fight for the last 20 years, whatever, but since 2022, they both pulled out of 1 fight for their own fault. Both of them were some type of injury or sickness. So I don't want to hear this that Khamzat's unreliable. Khamzat's so unreliable because he got deathly ill and pulled out of a Robert Whitaker fight. Makes no sense, and it's just an absolute dumbass reason and a bullshit narrative that people keep regurgitating that is driving me absolutely nuts. It's simply not true. Simply not true. So the UFC's fumbling horribly. I'm hoping that there's some legitimate reason. Again, I'm hoping that there's some legitimate reason. We're going to get to Dana White here in a second. We're going to get to him in a second. But I don't know what it could be. Are they planning for Khamzat Chimaev to headline an event in Saudi Arabia? Are they hoping to maybe sell a huge event? But then again, so now Chimaev's going to have to wait out till the end of 2025, right? Oh my God, it's about to be 2025. So now the UFC is telling Chimaev just sit on the sidelines and wait. And now people are going to criticize him for being inactive. Meanwhile, he's asking for fights. So there better be some type of good reason. Maybe he's sick. I mean, maybe he's sick again. Maybe he has an injury. Maybe they didn't want him to fight in Australia. There better be a good reason. But of course, Dana White didn't answer it at the post-fight, which we're going to get to in a second. One thing I want to look at before we get to this is Robert Whitaker's reaction to this news. Okay, let's check out what Robert Whitaker has to say about the UFC completely and utterly fumbling Du Plessis versus Chimaev. Du Plessis says he wants that fight, but instead we're going to give Sean Strickland 1 fight win streak, split decision, Paulo Costa, boring ass fighter, jabbing teep merchant. We're going to give him the title shot after he ducked Robert Whitaker, sat on the sidelines begging for an undeserved title shot because, oh, I had a close fight with Dricus, even though I never defended my belt. Let's see what Whitaker had to say.
I'm surprised Sean literally just sat out. Like, everyone was laughing at him when he said, I'm going to sit out until I get my title shot. And yeah. Dude straight up got a title shot. Props for that. Like you got to give it to him. Guy like straight up stuck by what he said.
Sat out off a win over Paulo Costa for a title shot. By the way, if we're issuing rematches for close fights, I want Costa to get a rematch against Strickland. I'm officially campaigning for Paulo Costa to get a rematch against Sean Strickland. We need Strickland Costa too. If Strickland wins the belt, Costa deserves a title shot because it was close. It was a split decision. Those liberal judges just robbed Paulo Costa. I mean, it's just so dumb. Now let's actually look before we get to Dana White. Let's look what Khamzat Chimaev has been tweeting out lately. Khamzat's been absolutely bodying crybaby Sean Strickland on Twitter. He posted this picture. It's okay, bro. Ha ha ha. Say sorry again. He tags him. I don't know. For some reason, Khamzat tweets at certain fighters and then tags the wrong Twitter handle. Post this of Strickland just fighting, super boring. He lifts up his leg. He just throws teeps and jabs. That's all he does. Has no finishing ability. Meanwhile, how many finishes does Khamzat have? Khamzat had, I mean, that's crazy. 12 finishes out of 14 fights. So the only 2 times he's gone to decisions against Usman and Gilbert. By the way, Usman beat Sean Strickland. It was a while ago, but he still beat him. How many finishes does Strickland have? Okay, he has 15 finishes, but how many of those were in the UFC again? I mean, I'm not going to go through and count them, but he has 2 finishes. 2 finishes in the last 4 years. So that tells you all you need to know. Let's see what else Khamzat's posting. Khamzat tags Strickland again, a fake Strickland account. This doesn't really, I guess he doesn't know how to spell or something. This your father, making fun of Sean Strickland, who cries, makes fun of people's wives and families and talks about advocating for child abuse. Sean Strickland has advocated for child abuse. So Khamzat makes fun of him and says P. Diddy is his father. So I have no, I'm not going to sit here and condemn Khamzat. Do I think it's the best taste in joke? No, I don't. But at the end of the day, Strickland advocates for alcoholic rage beating of children. Okay, I already showed in the clip. I'm not going to show it here. Let's see what else. Who was this G and posted this picture of Sean Strickland? As you guys know, I believe Sean Strickland is hiding in the closet, and his dad beat him to keep him in the closet. But we're not going to get into that. Let's jump over to Dana White. Let's jump over and talk about Dana White. Let's check out Dana White at UFC 310. He was asked, "Well, you booked Du Plessis versus Strickland 2. But what happened with Khamzat Chimaev? How close was Khamzat Chimaev to getting the title shot?" Listen to the question and Dana's absolutely hypocritical response when we expose him in a second.
How close was Khamzat to getting the title shot against DDP in Australia?
By the way, perfectly reasonable question. How close was Khamzat Chimaev to getting the title shot after beating Robert Whittaker and absolutely destroying him?
Oh yeah.
How close was it?
Yeah.
I mean, guys, what are you fucking? Is this tonight's stupid question night?
That's a perfectly reasonable question. What do I need to bring Jelly Bean with me? That little badass? I got to bring her with me to get an answer out of you? Huh? This dude acts like it's the most ridiculous. Like, you're the head of a company. You've talked about Khamzat getting a title shot. I'm going to expose it in a second. That's an unreasonable question. How did you guys come to terms with Sean Strickland, who's on a 1-fight winning streak, who never deserved his first title shot, split decision win against Costa, crybaby bitch, beta male soy boy? It wasn't out of the realm of possibility to say, you know what, it's a no-brainer to give Chimaev the title shot. It's a no-brainer. But Dana White acts like this is such a ludicrous question. What an idiot.
Close was he to getting?
I'm asking you because after his win against Robert Whittaker, you said he might be next, right? So
right.
I was just.
He's not next.
Gotcha.
How close was he? I don't know. I mean, we sit in a room every Tuesday and we pick fights.
Was he in the conversation too?
He's always in the conversation.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Thank
so
you.
Basically non-answer and criticize the question. Let's skip ahead to this. You guys may have not seen this because this was a interview that wasn't really, the video didn't really make the rounds, but this is Dana White not that long ago, a couple weeks ago, in the lead up to UFC 309, asked about Khamzat Chimaev. Listen to this. So remember that question is totally unreasonable. Let's listen to this question from Jim Rome.
How impressive was my guy Chimaev at UFC 308? I love him. How impressive was he to you, and what's next for him?
Yeah. No, he looked incredible. And, his manager was telling me before the fight that mentally, physically, and emotionally, he's the best he's ever been. He said, I'm telling you, wait till you see him on Saturday. And he was right. He was dead on. This guy's never looked better, especially against the competition that he had. I'm looking forward to him getting a title fight in 25.
So what?
Looking forward to him getting a title fight in 25, but yet this over here was a dumb question. This was a dumb question. There's a little bit more. We'll listen to it.
What's next? Who specifically is next for him?
We'll see how this plays out here, but I want him to fight in the United States. I want him to fight for a title here in the U.S.
All right, Dana, what about...
So my only thing is, I can only assume is, they're waiting and hoping and praying that Dana's political connections can help get Khamzat into the U.S. because they want him fighting in Vegas. That's the only thing that I can think of right now. Next clip. This is from a Kevin Iole interview. This is 3 weeks ago in the lead up to UFC 309. Let's see what he had to say here.
Did he do enough in that fight against Robert Whittaker, who I thought looked incredible, to get the title fight against Dricus?
Yeah, he looked incredible. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He is deserving of a title shot.
He is deserving of a title shot. How dare somebody ask me, why didn't you give Khamzat a title shot?
So is he able to fight, and are you actively trying to make a fight with him and Dricus now?
We haven't done anything yet.
Okay.
I have no information on that one.
So he has no idea. Now, before we look at this next clip, I want to look at something else. I want to go back and rewatch this, okay? I know we just saw this, but I need you to hear Dana's response and then the other clip that I'm going to show you back to back. Listen to this again.
Close was Khamzat to getting the title shot against DDP in Australia?
How close was it?
Yeah.
I mean, guys, what are you fucking? Is this tonight's stupid question night?
Stupid question night. Stupid question night at UFC 310 post fight. Let's skip ahead to, or skip behind. Let's go in the past for, the end of October, UFC 308. Someone asked almost the same question. There's no way Dana said, that's a great question. There's no possible way, right? There's no possible way someone asked Dana roughly what? A little less than 2 months ago? Yeah, a month and a half ago. There's no way someone asked Dana the same question and Dana responded with, good question. That's a great question, right? That's not possible, right? There's no way.
Dana, after 2 weeks ago, you said Sean Strickland will be next for Dricus Du Plessis, but after seeing Khamzat's performance tonight, is Strickland still next, or is it going to depend?
It's a good question.
You can't write this stuff, boys. You can't write. Yeah, that's a good question. Whether or not Khamzat is going to get a title shot. Why wouldn't Khamzat get a title shot after you've alluded to it countless times? But for someone to ask you that after you announced another fight, that's a dumb question. But we'll listen to it a little bit more.
Call me on Tuesday.
All right.
So there you go. There you go. That's what you hear, Dana. From stupid question night to, oh, yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. Great question, media member. Dana is becoming more checked out by the day. They absolutely fumbled a mega fight between Dricus Du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev. Du Plessis wanted it. Chimaev wanted it. The fans wanted it. It made the most money. So there has to be a good reason. I'm absolutely livid. My brain can't accept any other rationale than there has to be some type of good reason. It's not because, oh, Chimaev's unreliable. By the way, the people acting as if Strickland deserves the title shot more than Chimaev, they are officially biased against Muslim and Caucasus region fighters. I cannot accept any other answer than that. They're a Sean Strickland fanboy, or they just don't like the fighters from the Caucasus region because they're discriminatory against them. I don't care what you want. You can cry about it. You can say, Joey, why are you always saying this type of stuff? You're so woke. You're insert whatever political buzzwords you want. You can say it. If you actively open your mouth, any educated adult that says, man, Sean Strickland deserved it more, or you want to see Strickland, I'm telling you right now, if you want to see Strickland versus Du Plessis too, you're a liar. I don't believe you for 1 second, because take all bias apart. Just pull all bias out of it. If you'd rather see Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland too over Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev, you can't convince me that you're not mentally ill. Du Plessis versus Chimaev is a straight up banger. Hopefully it still happens, but it just sucks because now what are we going to have to wait until mid to late 2020? Man. I mean, even best case scenario, we got to wait till late 2025 now. The bright side is Strickland somehow wins. I doubt he does, but if Strickland somehow wins, he's going to have to fight Chimaev, and he's going to cry about it, and he's probably going to get finished for sure, I would bet. But, man, it's hard not to be totally bummed out. The UFC fumbles the bag. I'm hoping something happens. I'm actually hoping that somehow Strickland gets arrested. Maybe, he gets a minor injury. He can't fight in February, because I needed Du Plessis versus Chimaev. I needed Du Plessis, and it's just like a road of undeserved title shot after undeserved title shot. Again, Strickland's not the most undeserving contender ever, but Chimaev is undoubtedly a more deserving contender. UFC completely fumbled UFC 312 in Australia. I feel bad for the Australian fans as well. Also, by the way, I don't know if I said this. I'm picking Weili Zhang. I'm picking Dricus Du Plessis. But yeah, I mean, Dricus Du Plessis versus anybody other than Khamzat Chimaev, but especially Sean Strickland, Mr. Jab and Teep, Beta Male, Theo Von's podcast, Crybaby. Oh, man, it's a total disgrace, and I'm totally bummed out about it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.